Prime Minister Narendra Modi has spoken with his New Zealand counterpart, Prime Minister Christopher Luxon. Mr. Luxon has congratulated Prime Minister Narendra Modi on his re-election in India, and both the leaders also reiterated their commitment to advance bilateral ties rooted in shared democratic values and people-to-people contact. My colleague Akanksha Swaroop is with us on the phone line for more inputs on this story. Akanksha, this is an important conversation between both the New Zealand Prime Minister and the Indian PM. Congratulations on re-election is one thing, but there is more to it than just a regular phone call.
Absolutely. In fact, Griha, I'd also want to inform all our viewers that there's in fact a statement that's been shared by the Prime Minister's office, which in fact talks about how Prime Minister Modi has spoken about with, in fact, the Prime Minister of New Zealand. And it also shares a very heartwarming message of how Prime Minister Modi was congratulated by the New Zealand Prime Minister Luxon, on his re-election. Both leaders have, in fact, reiterated their commitment to advance bilateral ties that have already been rooted in shared democratic values. And our people-to-people ties go back a long way. Remember, in that hemisphere of the world, we've seen how several Indians are not just based in Australia, but also in New Zealand. And in fact, during this conversation, both the Prime Ministers agreed to advance cooperation in areas of trade, animal husbandry, pharmaceuticals, education, space, and several other areas. Prime Minister has, in fact, gone on to thank the New Zealand counterpart for looking after the interests of the Indian diaspora, as I was highlighting, is quite a sizable one in New Zealand. Prime Minister Luxon has also assured of their security and well-being. Let's not forget that Prime Minister Luxon has been quite a diehard supporter and ardent admirer of the Indian Prime Minister, because when the Ram Mandir was inaugurated, Prime Minister Luxon was one of those few world leaders who had extended their congratulatory wishes to the Indian Prime Minister. He said that the Ram Mandir is in fact a result of Prime Minister Modi's hard work and his laborious efforts. So
Yes.
Such is the relationship between both the Prime Ministers, which is also sort of reflecting in the bilateral ties. Griha.
Absolutely. And Akanksha, also way back in March in 2024, also the Deputy Prime Minister of New Zealand, Mr. Winston Peters, had reiterated how important is India connect with New Zealand society. They'd spoken about economy and security and the ever-growing bilateral ties between India. In that regard, how significant this conversation should be when it comes to these two world leaders conversing together?
You know, we've already been trying to focus on expanding cooperation in various sectors, whether it is trade, commerce, education. You know, sports and people-to-people ties are two areas which are now sort of taking the focus as well. We've seen how Prime Minister had earlier also established ties with the previous New Zealand Prime Minister as well. But having said that, there's renewed vigor and fresh hope now being bestowed upon Prime Minister Luxon, now with, you know, his congratulatory wishes coming in for the Prime Minister. Trust this relationship to also go forward. Having said that, you know, there are also racist incidents which have been taking place with the Indian diaspora, whether it is in New Zealand or even Australia. But with this kind of cementing of the bilateral relationship, something that we are seeing move forward with this phone call, do expect a further cementing of the bilateral ties as well.
Akanksha, thank you so much for all of that information. And on that note, we are shifting our focus to this next